Rejection sensitivity, rejection sensitive dysphoria, these are common experiences in the autistic and ADHD communities. But why is that? What's really happening, and how can you manage your reaction to rejection, both real and perceived? In this video, I'll share my own personal 3-part framework to understand and manage rejection sensitivity. We'll look at common experiences of rejection, how rejection sensitivity and rejection sensitive dysphoria often manifest, and of course, most importantly, what you can do about it. Hi everyone, Paul Micallef here from Autism from the Inside. I make weekly videos sharing the human side of autism, so make sure you hit subscribe to get the latest content. So one of my first ever really popular videos was called Rejection is the Story of My Life. In just a couple of months after release, it went on to receive over 1,000 views and eventually went on to become my first video to break the 10,000 mark. Clearly, I'd hit a nerve with some relatable experiences. Back in those early days, I was very nervous sharing content on the internet, so I would often share draft edits of videos with friends before publishing publicly. As I said, I was very nervous. I wasn't sure I had anything valuable to say. I wasn't sure anyone could relate to my experiences. So, in kind of a funny way, in hindsight, I was so scared of potential rejection that I needed to get some reassurance from friends in advance before actually releasing the video. The feedback on this one, though, wasn't all that positive. Isn't that a bit extreme, they said? I mean, come on, story of your life, really? But I persisted. Actually, yes, rejection is a really core experience that I felt it was worth sharing. And as I discovered sharing the video publicly, intense feelings of rejection is a really common experience in our community. So recently, you may have heard the term Rejection Sensitive Dysphoria, or RSD. It's become a very popular term in the ADHD community, with some sources suggesting that up to 100% of people with ADHD have rejection sensitive dysphoria. And if that's true, probably half the autistic community do as well, given the extremely high prevalence of co-occurrence with ADHD. With that in mind though, it may surprise you to learn, because it definitely surprised me when I heard this, Rejection Sensitive Dysphoria, or RSD, is not an official diagnosis term at all, but rather a very commonly used, evidently quite useful, framework for understanding and managing common experiences. So regardless of the stats or the official terms, what we know for sure is that for many of us, rejection is a very serious issue. I'm personally not a fan of trying to get too specific on labels, so in this video I'll break it down into 3 major categories that I find useful. There's rejection issues and rejection challenges, rejection sensitivity, and rejection dysphoria. Rejection issues and challenges stem from actually being rejected, experiencing ostracism, for example. Rejection sensitivity is difficulty dealing with rejection, including perceived rejection and anticipated rejection. And rejection dysphoria is an intense feeling of rejection even when all evidence is to the contrary. So don't get too hung up on the distinctions. These are just my categories that I've found to be extremely useful, and they may or may not overlap precisely with other people's definitions. The reason I talk about these 3 is because I find that very often all 3 are present at the same time, which can be confusing because each need a different response. To give you a very simple example, sensitivity to being rejected or anxiety about the possibility of being rejected is usually based, at least in part, on a real experience of actually being rejected. So even an extreme overreaction can still be based in reality. So let's start by looking at rejection dysphoria. What separates this one is that when the mood strikes, it can actively perceive rejection where none exists. Dysphoria is the opposite of euphoria. It's a severe sense of unease, unhappiness, like a really bad mood. And we know that our mood, our emotions, color everything that we see. You've probably heard the phrase, to see the world through rose-colored glasses. If I put on a literal pair of rose-colored glasses, it filters the light that's coming into my eyes and gives everything a rosy tint. A white wall now looks like a rose-colored wall. Rejection dysphoria is like looking at the world through rejection-colored glasses. It filters your experiences to give them all a tint of rejection, even completely neutral situations. Here are some examples of neutral or even positive reactions, and see if you can feel how they could be interpreted as rejection. Would you like to go out to dinner on Saturday? I'm busy that night, but we should definitely catch up another time though. A friend simply responds okay to my message with no emoji. Thanks for being on time today. Can you relate to reading into situations, fearing the worst and finding threats in every unspoken thing? He said you can come to the party if you want. Does that mean he doesn't want me to be there? Some people describe it as coming on very suddenly, hitting you like a ton of bricks, your inner monologue turning on you, everyone secretly hates you. If this is you, it might help to simply acknowledge that it's happening. I'm experiencing the thing again. What do I do? How do I get grounded to reality again? This can be incredibly difficult to do by yourself, but sometimes a trusted friend can help just remind you of what you already know to be true. I'm here, I like you, you're experiencing rejection dysphoria, I know it's intense, it's going to be okay. So we've spoken about the dysphoria part, seeing the world through a rejection-colored lens. The next factor is sensitivity. My favorite example to describe sensitivity is sunburned skin. Even very light touch, everyday touch, even touch that would normally be pleasant, is in this case painful due to the sunburn. I wouldn't just tell my skin to be less sensitive, instead I would look after it. Real, perceived, or even anticipated looks like an extreme reaction to a small trigger. And when I say extreme, it's often fight, flight, freeze type of extreme. There's an evolutionary argument that says for humans living in tribes, social acceptance was literally life or death, which means these types of rejection experiences can trigger crisis panic mode. And there are any number of possible responses of what this looks like. Maybe you get angry at being rejected. How dare they do this to me? Maybe you shut down and withdraw. That's it, I'm never reaching out again. I was stupid to trust people in the first place. Or maybe you jump straight into people-pleasing mode. That's okay, no problem. Anything you want, maybe another time. Don't worry about it. These are all examples of possible reactions when the pain of rejection is just too unbearably intense. And you may notice that they're all disconnecting reactions. From a polyvagal perspective, our bodies have two main modes, sympathetic and parasympathetic. When we're in fight, flight, survival mode, we are not focusing on creating relationships. I need to protect myself. It's not safe to open up and be vulnerable and try and connect with others. It's the calmer parasympathetic mode that allows us to feel safe, empathize with others, and try and build those connections. Why is this important? Well, you may have noticed that an extreme overreaction to a perceived rejection leads to disconnection and eventually an actual rejection, or at least the loss of a relationship. I know this has happened many times for me. Someone I care about disappoints me, I perceive it as rejection, and my reaction to that perceived rejection seriously damages the relationship. Sometimes irreparably damages the relationship. Ironically, I was only disappointed because I cared about the relationship. And now it's like a mini self-fulfilling prophecy because I was scared of being rejected and that led to actually being rejected. Which is actually technically not true either, because there's a big difference between being rejected and experiencing relationship breakdown. But my rejection sensitive brain just lumps it all into the same category. And now we come to the third element of rejection issues and challenges. This is where, for one reason or another, I end up excluded from groups or unable to maintain the relationships I want. As we saw earlier, sometimes this is due in no small part to my own actions, but also, very often, society is just not set up in my favor. I've always liked the analogy of the autistic life being on hard mode, where others can just follow their instincts and get by most of the time. Doing the same for me leaves me on the outer, the weird kid that no one wants to play with. Social ostracism is real. We are hardwired to avoid the weird kid and ask questions like, "What's wrong with you?" Ostracism is a well-documented phenomenon in lots of species, not just humans. Fortunately though, this reaction is mostly a fear of the unknown, which means once people get to know me, my behavior might still be quirky and unconventional, but it's no longer weird, strange, disturbing, that kind of thing. Attempting to overcome this barrier, dealing with genuine rejection, can be tough, like really tough. Hands up who had a good experience in primary school. Not many of us. You've probably experienced significant rejection. And to say that you're upset because you're sensitive just does not accurately represent the situation. It significantly downplays the experience. Yes, there are some times when I am sensitive and I do overreact to small things. And if we're honest, my sensitivity is probably due in no small part to a lifetime of significant negative experiences. But when my rejection is real, my situation is real. It's not a small thing. It's not perceived. It's not just an imagined possible future. It's happening right now. And I react in the same way that any other human would react in these circumstances because rejection is a normal part of the human experience. When that happens, it's not cool to call me sensitive. That invalidates my experience. So anyway, that's why, in my opinion, it's very helpful to distinguish between rejection issues and challenges, rejection sensitivity, and rejection dysphoria. They could potentially all be at play, but each of them needs a different response. If I really have experienced significant rejection in a situation, I need to acknowledge that and validate my feelings and figure out how to recover. If my reaction is disproportionate to the trigger, then it helps to take a step back and calm down, wait till I can see clearly again before doing anything that could potentially make the situation worse. If my perception is colored by dysphoria, then I may need help grounding back to reality and reining in those catastrophic thoughts. Anyway, I should probably leave it there for today. This has been my framework to think about rejection sensitivity and rejection sensitive dysphoria. I hope you found it helpful. As usual, I'm really interested to hear from you. Do you experience rejection sensitivity? How do you manage it? Do you have a strategy for checking if the rejection you perceive has a strong basis in reality or not? Please leave a comment if you can. I'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, until next time, thanks for watching and I'll see you next week. Bye.